Hasn't.
No.
Okay, well, here's Christine and Violet and Hasa. Victoria online.
Let's see. So we have Christy, Andrea, Lisa. So it's during in the room. Yeah. For folks online, we're just finishing setting up here and we'll get started in about a minute or two. On Dean Crosby.
Not yet.
Okay. Sounds like we're still getting quite a few folks joining right now, so we need to give it a couple minutes.
Yeah, I think 5 o'clock was.
Yeah. So
There's some more of those
Kate is here.
pamphlets in the back meeting.
Thanks.
Oh, she has.
Lisa are online. That'll make 6, so I'll give us 4. Valerie's gonna be here in about 5 or 10.
Okay.
But we also have a lot of people popping on.
Okay, Dana's on.
Okay, great.
Give it 2 more minutes.
Yeah, I think that's good. Let folks come in.
Are there any more of these packets anywhere or just?
I think that's it for. You're welcome to use it though. I don't know if anyone else can use it.
We've got 15 people. Okay. Oh, wait. The 3 of the shoe.
Is there any way to post the acronym list that in the chat or anything? A link to it, I mean?
If we post it online, we could post a link to it.
Yeah.
To the website.
What else stuff I can do about?
To drop.
My
Pretty sure it's fine.
is to not say the acronyms, but to say the full word.
Yeah, I was guilty as well of doing that, I know by myself.
There's somebody who's a phone number. You're gonna do introductions, right?
Yeah, we'll open the meeting in I think about a minute. So we're how about
Let me change.
Seems like maybe Laura or was it Levy may have some questions about it. You see it?
It's starting to share your PowerPoint, which. There's
Okay. So Kelly just posted it in the chat.
Great, thank you.
So we have data online, ready this video. Yeah, can you ask her if she has any animated or video slides, just to be sure? I did text her, but I don't check on having
I
back.
just made a password or something.
Either. It's there. Just checking what it does.
Hi, Dana. Dana, this is Lisa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can. Wondering if there was a video of one of your slides, because our presentation doesn't have one.
You're a little bit echoey for me. There is a video on one of my slides. It's embedded. It's on slide 20. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Yes. I wonder if it's on our side, maybe, or, but what's on that slide?
It's a video of navigating the OHA website, basically.
Okay. Are we still echoey, Dana? That's just the run.
No, I don't think so. I think it might
Yeah.
depend on who's talking and where the microphone is, maybe.
That's fine.
It is 5:05 PM on July 9th. We'll go ahead and get this meeting called to order for the Bradford Island Restoration Advisory Board. We will start with roll call. Remember, do I do roll call with you or just the community members?
I think we typically just start with the name.
Okay, sorry, actually. It's a long 2 months since I've been here.
As part of the quorum.
Okay. Didn't think so. Okay, so co-chair, I'm no longer interim, so we can take that part off. I'm here. Christy Baptiste,
Yes, I'm here.
Ellery Hoy,
On her way.
Asa Leckie, Carl Merkel, Kate Murphy,
Here.
Mitch Patton,
Here.
Jennifer Riddle,
Here.
To be determined.
Andrea, I always get this wrong. I'm gonna say
Samara.
Samara, thank you. And
Here.
Pamela Tweed.
I'm here.
Okay.
And for our record, Valerie's just joined us.
Oh, perfect, okay. All right, so it looks like if I kept track right, Carl is the only one not present unless I missed him.
Hello, can you hear me?
There we go. Look at that. We're all here.
Right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Carl.
Well, I don't know if you can or not. Anyways, this is Carl Merkel. I'm on the phone. My Teams link or Microsoft Teams link would not work. So I'm on the phone and you are really barely intelligible. It's hard to understand you, but I will give it a try.
All right. Thank you, Carl. We will do our best to speak slowly and clearly.
All right, thank you.
Or everyone's having trouble hearing, you're just.
I did some audio checks earlier and it seemed like it was working okay. It sounds like you might just have a bad.
Okay. I did have trouble the first time I joined, it was on my phone and I couldn't do Teams and I couldn't hear very well on the phone for whatever reason.
It's not the greatest.
Okay,
It's what the city can afford.
okay. got it.
Okay, yeah, because Valerie's saying that she can hear everybody clearly, so I guess it's a mix of experience.
Okay. And we'll do our best in the room to speak loudly, clearly, so that everyone can hear.
Okay, we'll move right into approval of the May and June 2024 Brad minutes.
Let me get the slide advanced too, please.
I will open it up for motions to approve those minutes.
I know in one of the parts in the second reading, there was a statement that was made that I had said something about metal signs or for the Public Works Department, but I believe Asa had brought that up. And other than that, everything else looked pretty good to me.
Let's just switch.
I think it was Asa that brought it up, because he brought up about the Public Works Department. I'm almost positive that he had asked that.
Was that June?
The last one I said. Yeah.
I got your email, thank you, and
Okay.
so I just need to go back and listen to the recording
Okay,
and confirm.
but other than that, it looked good to me.
All right, so would you like to make a motion with that amendment?
I'll motion to amend it, yep.
Okay, we have a motion by Mitch to approve the May and June minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second Asa.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, I will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Hi.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
That's like a melody. That was nice. Just to double check, anybody opposed, nay?
I can say aye for June, I was not at the May meeting.
Then you can still vote.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, for June.
Yeah.
Wasn't here.
Not hearing any opposed, motion passes. All right, and I was being not at the June meeting, I'm still trying to catch up on this discussion, the offsite information gathering. I'm not sure where that discussion left off.
I can give us a little background for that discussion. So we had a few questions about potential areas off-site that Bonneville hazardous waste from Bonneville could have been placed into other off-site areas. Some members have been doing some gathering of information. And we decided, I believe it was 1 or 2 months ago, that we would talk a little bit more about that tonight, of any particular findings related to Bradford Island. So that's kind of where we left it last time.
I did quite a few hours researching, trying to find out other county municipalities who had landfills in the immediate area around here. And talked with Multnomah County, and was quite a task to get through that. And the bottom line is, everybody says they have no records of receiving anything from Bonneville Dam. And not only that, but they don't have a lot of records of even what went into these landfills during that, between 50 and 70 something. That they have, nobody has any records, so. And if Army Corps doesn't have the records that they were shipping household stuff off-site, then I guess we're not gonna find anything anywhere, would be my guess.
I have been told it's very typical in that time frame, the 1950s to 1970s, that it was not typical to have records like we have today.
Yeah.
So that certainly is part of a challenge. Which is not to say we can't look into areas if there's, for example, community knowledge, or there's some like logical path of believing that the waste would have gone off-site.
Yeah, and the other one that I wasn't real clear about, it seemed like in the last meeting, the map number 1 that showed kind of the time frame of how the island and the dam started, but it talked, I could have swore, like in the 1930s or 50s, it had read on there that the Hamilton Island landfill was opened then, but now reading it today, it just says landfill opened. What, did I misread something when it said Hamilton Island landfill?
Have we made any change? I think that's talking about the timeline that's on the first poster. To my knowledge, I don't think we've changed any text on that since we've started.
Yeah, did we identify the landfill as Hamilton? I don't remember.
I thought that's what I had read, that it said Hamilton landfill was opened in 1950, I thought. But then when I read it today, it said that it was 1950, the pistol range and landfill was open. And so the one that I'm trying to find out is where this landfill that opened in 1950 was at. Because I keep hearing the words Hamilton Island landfill, which was 264 acres of landfill, construction landfill from the dam. But that all went south of the town and a little bit, or not south, would be west of, downstream of Cascade, or North Bonneville today. But Hamilton Island was south of, or downstream of where North Bonneville is today. But Hamilton Island isn't there anymore, and Hamilton Island is called, from what I've gathered, is the island right below the second powerhouse. It's called Hamilton Island. So there's some gray area that I'm losing as to what is Hamilton Island? Where was it before? What I've understood, Hamilton Island was downstream of the town of North Bonneville, and they did the construction of the second powerhouse. And during that whole time, all that construction bill went down. And somehow Hamilton, the old Hamilton Island is now land, is what I've gathered, but I can't find any aerial photos anywhere that shows the old island. There's one in that administration building we were in when we did the tour of the site. There was a picture, and I asked the guy from Army Corps there, is that Hamilton Island? What is that slough? And he said, wasn't positive, but he thought for sure that was the old slough in between mainland and Hamilton Island. But now today, I think that slough's gone. And it's the whole island, all the way, the island's gone, but it's land all the way clear up to the dam access road. But then if you look at the map, it says Hamilton Island is the island right below the second powerhouse. So I was trying to get some clarification is what is Hamilton Island? And also through aerial photos, if there's anything that shows us where that original initial landfill was at. Was it the tip of Bradford Island that they're calling the landfill that was open?
So I can provide a couple points of clarification.
Yeah.
On the timeline that we have on that first poster, and we've had that timeline up in other areas for display, it's one of our typical, like, pieces of media for Bradford Island. It talks about the landfill in the 30s through 50s, that's referring to the landfill located on the northwest tip of Bradford Island. To my knowledge, that poster's never said Hamilton Island, but, John has a copy of that graphic and we can double check that to make sure.
Okay.
But to my knowledge, we haven't changed that phrasing. I think the only phrasing we have changed on that timeline was like adding an S somewhere where it was, you know, grammatically incorrect or something like that. And then in terms of the island south of the second powerhouse, that's actually Cascades Island. And to my knowledge, it's never been called Hamilton Island. Hamilton Island is sort of located southwest, a little downriver of the dam. And yeah, when you look at the photos, it doesn't look like a clear, like, kind of island, but that's the area.
Okay, that's what I may have,
So I think,
when I,
I was gonna chime in. So I think what I think maybe, and again, part of this is we were never, a part of Hamilton Island, so it's a little uncertain for us as well. And I know Rich has gotten given a point of contact if you're wanting more information about Hamilton Island, but I think what he's talking about is that there was probably an area that was called Hamilton Island. Then after the site, it's not called an island anymore, and maybe what they call Hamilton Island is kind of shifted versus what was the Hamilton Island Superfund site. Just with how that all looks geographically, and that's the part that I'm not certain, but I think that's what you're trying to understand.
yeah, that's what, the one thing that like I struggled with is finding aerial photos. That show as the construction was going, as these landfills were open, they're up to the point where they closed them. I just can't seem to find those aerial photos anywhere. I don't know if it's because it's on Army Corps ground, they're just not available to the public. Or I'm asking the wrong question.
For the Hamilton Island specifically, that contact, the EPA contact that, Rich Francis had previously provided, that would be the best person, I would think, to ask.
Was that through Army Corps? Do you remember?
Sorry, can you rephrase the question?
The contact that he had given, was that the Army Corps, like, because I get.
That wasn't the EPA point.
It wasn't the EPA one, okay.
Yeah, that's the farmers.
This is Lydia. Are you familiar just with the Hamilton Island website because for the Superfund page? Because I can share that in the chat, and it has the site contact.
Okay, I'll research it again and see if I can come up with that contact and see if we can get some aerial photos of.
Yeah, Lydia, if you'd like to go ahead and put that in the chat and then we can capture it in the minutes.
Totally. I appreciate the question though. I'm on the same page as Megan and Jackie that I'm not aware of Cascades Island ever being, because Cascades Island, that's correct, that Cascades Island is where the second powerhouse is. And then I'm not aware that Hamilton Island, that the landfill on Bradford Island was ever called Hamilton Island. The only Hamilton Island that I'm aware of is the one that was a former Superfund site. And I will share
downstream.
that. Exactly, downstream, yes. So I will just drop it in the chat.
Thanks, Lydia.
Well, that clears up the Hamilton Island, kind of, I mean, like, it's not at the lower end of the second powerhouse.
Yeah, it's not there.
It's Cascade Island, but we still don't know for sure what Hamilton Island is downstream from its original time as being Hamilton Island.
And for info, we will talk about Cascades Island briefly as part of our project status.
Okay. But then as far as the, like I said, on the off-site stuff, I don't think that there's anything that I'm ever gonna be able to dig up that would show that. Because the one thing that I think needs to be cleared up is this original dump site. I think Rich had mentioned that. Why would Army Corps ever leave the property with anything if they were dumping it on site? But where was this site?
I think he's referring to, and Rich isn't here to clarify, but I
Right.
believe he was referring to Hamilton Island previously being used as a
During that
landfill.
construction. Okay.
Yeah, that, I believe that's correct, but we would need to confirm that with Rich but I think that's what he had said.
But I guess the thing is that I still struggle with is the size. If from 1950 to the 70s, Army Corps was dumping all their waste on site. That's a pretty big area that would have to show up on a map somewhere. If there's a landfill that held all that waste, then where is it buried? If it's not on site, which my guess is a bunch of it left site and went either to Cascade Locks or the Stevenson landfill. Is my guess is where it went to, but nobody has any record of it, but if we can't even find where Army Corps was dumping on site between 1930 and 1970, 60-ish with an aerial photo, then it does lead one person to believe that that material left that site and went somewhere. And the most reasonable place would be Cascade Locks or Stevenson, the closest two landfills that I can find.
No
Be nice to get
landfill
to-
that there's no landfill that I'm aware of on Cascades Island, on what is currently Cascades Island.
I wouldn't think so either. I was thinking that Bradford Island, that north tip, but it's just not a very big area.
No,
But I don't
it's
know.
not. It had a very kind of specific purpose, but like you said, for some of the other activities, I think, again, with where it was placed, like I said, but that's where we kind of have the separation of Hamilton Island was its own site, and if that's where things were placed, but that site has its own process that it's gone through.
Right.
And then with
They're
what
just a-
Bradford Island, we're focused on the CERCLA for Bradford Island, these areas that we do know have hazardous waste, and yes, the landfill is small because it had just kind of very specific purpose at the time. It wasn't just
Yeah.
like a dump everything.
Yeah, I'm just saying there seems to be a big time span between 1930 and 1970 that there's a tremendous amount of waste left that site that nobody knows where it went to.
And that's why we have the EPA now.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
well,
I would
and-
like clarification myself as to, you
Yeah,
know,
and a
if
lot
there's
of
a
that is,
possibility way to find this or not, or is it something that we're gonna say nobody knows about?
yeah, and that's the hard part. And again, with coming in on this project, because it's in the stage that it's at, all of that kind of work and determination was done previously, and where we are now is now we've got focused in on where we know, based on the site use, what could be contaminated. Obviously, we've done investigations such far that we're trying to refine that, where again, we have found contamination, and we're trying to determine that nature and extent. A lot of our investigations are focused too. So we're, going to those areas that we know. And then, like I said, we have a preliminary assessment on Cascades Island to see if there's any activities that, we have documentation of that would warrant moving forward with investigation. That's a whole other parallel kind of line for Cascades. And, if we have to have enough information to warrant going forward. And like I said, I can't speak to what was in those past reports. I haven't, because of where we are in the project. So at some point that was, where we've looked at is where determined where we felt it was likely based on interviews and documentation. So that's just what we have.
Unless there's any other burning desire to continue this discussion, I know we have quite a few lengthy presentations tonight to get through before 7. So I want to make sure we have time to get through those. Any other last comments about offsite dumping?
This is Lydia again. I'll just I'll say that I think it's an interesting question, but as Jackie and Megan said, we've identified the PCBs and sediments at Bradford Island as the driver in terms of what's most important to clean up. And so yeah, like I said, I do think it's an interesting question, but that's basically the stage that it's at this point is narrowing in on the known sources of contamination and delineating where all of it is.
Yeah, I don't want to discourage the conversation, and if, more information does come up, make sure somebody have to find something, I'd definitely bring it to us.
I'll keep digging.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, we have an application to review. I don't actually have it handy with me. Do you happen to?
I did not bring a copy. I previously sent a copy to the RAB members, but I have not kept up on the conversation with whether that's been reviewed by everybody yet and is ready to vote or not.
There was semi-consensus from the group to just talk about it at the meeting now.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
We
this
just
is
want to
Pam.
display
I
it.
received it and have read it and am ready to make a decision if everyone else is.
I actually had some questions just about the makeup of the board, like, I think that was on your slide, like, how many people, we've elected officials, their, residents. Are you trying to keep the makeup a certain number, or is it, I'm just trying to understand the makeup of the board as a whole, what that would look
Yeah,
like.
and that's the next topic on the agenda, but if the board would like, we can flip them and have that conversation first before we vote on this application.
Right, and I'm definitely, ready to vote on it, but I'm also just trying to understand with this person's background, like, what the makeup of the board's supposed to look like, that would help me.
Generally, the intent of really any RAB is to be a diverse collection of the folks in the community. It's always very valuable if you have a underserved population or a population that's not represented in the RAB to bring them in. And then from there, it's really the determination of the voting members themselves of whether they think an application is, whether the person's just very interested, they want to bring them on board, whether they are from a certain population that you would like to see more or any of on the RAB. Okay, thank you.
Please, at this point, I'll entertain any motions to appoint the applicant to the board.
I'll make a motion to nominate Rudy for being the board member.
Or second.
Asa.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to appoint Rudy to the RAB board. Any further discussion? Okay, not hearing any, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Sally.
Aye.
Sounds like overwhelming majority. Rudy, right, is now appointed to the board. Megan, will you reach out to them and
Absolutely.
get them onboarded? Fantastic. Now we can go into a deeper conversation on the makeup of the board. In our guidelines, what do we call them?
Operating procedure.
Operating procedures, up to 20 is our limit. I don't know if we'll ever get to 20. If we did, great, but I don't know if we'll ever get there.
We need a bigger room.
Yes, we would, yeah. I think the question is there a minimum number that, at least my question, is there a minimum number we want to keep it at to where we're actively recruiting members? When we reach that point, if we get them, great, fantastic, but we're not actively putting advertisements out. And the number stuck in my head is 10 to 12, somewhere in there. But it's up to the whole board, so. And if this conversation already happened last week, sorry.
And just to confirm, Rudy makes us 11.
11, yes. Yeah, 11.
I would say that if, to leave the application system open, you know,
Right.
to leave it open in case people come along and decide that, hey, they got news of what's going on, they want to be part of it. But at least have it available, but leave it as, if everybody wants, you know, 10 or 12 or 15, or if it's open, still open and 20 is a number, why would you not take 20 if we ever got to it? But
We would still take them, but I think if we get to a point where we were at 6 or 5 members and we were really pushing and advertising, is there a threshold number where we get down to 8 or 6 again, where we ask the core to start pushing those advertisements?
yeah, I would say, yeah, if you get down to 8
Jordan, I was
people,
gonna jump in where, I mean, what, just with, us having it posted on the website, I mean, we could say that, where, RAB membership is full, but, please, if you feel like you'd want to be considered at a time, if a RAB member leaves, or, kind of be like on a wait list almost to be a RAB member, we could have their application for later. So we still have, we know folks are interested, but that we're not accepting new members at this time. I mean, we could make sure to clarify that with the link. So it doesn't go away. It's there. People can, but that, they're not accepting applications at the time, but, please show us your interest in case a position opens.
Agreed, but I think it sounds like that scenario wouldn't happen until we get to the 20 mark, it sounds like, or am I wrong? That's
up to the RAB. That's up to the RAB to decide what you would like to stop accepting active applications. If that's the 10, if you're saying, okay, let's, accept no more than 12, and then anything over 12, they go on a wait list, or 20, I think I would say, and Kelly and Lisa may join in because they've, helped with quite a few RABs, that, the more RAB members, it does, I think, tend to get a bit more challenging to manage, but that is completely up to the RAB to decide what their kind of max number that they want to have as the RAB.
Yeah, and one of the considerations is the training. So if you want to cycle people in at a certain time, you could have them on a wait list and then say, okay, and this year now we're going to do another training. Let's decide if we're going to accept people. Because bringing people up to speed is a consideration.
what if a guy went with, say, if it gets down to 8 members, then the applications that have been received that would be on a waiting list, if we're then say every 6 months would be a review to bring those applicants up for review.
It's whatever the RAB decides,
Yes.
but we're just advising about the logistics of when you bring people in and then bringing them up to speed. We can slow down the process, or if they have been kept up to date because they're attending meetings. That could be
Yeah,
different.
and I wouldn't even say you have to have a number that like is low. I mean, so if you say we're gonna max it out at 12, and then you drop down a member, you could at that point go to your wait list and say, hey, we want to get back up to 12. I would think if you got down to maybe 8 again, then it's maybe like Jordan said, that's when we start pushing the advertisement more, because we don't have anybody in the wait list. We don't have anybody that's still kind of putting in active interest. But that wait list you could utilize and vote on at any time when you go below that max number. You don't have to wait until you reach like a minimum number.
Yeah, this is Kate. I agree with that, particularly because, if you leave folks on a wait list too long, we tend to lose people. So that makes sense to try and give, as spots open up, to try and give people opportunity to participate.
So are you thinking, say, the minimum number would be 12, and then if there's applications waiting, then if we fall below, if we hit 11, then bring in the applicants for review if there's any of them left.
Yeah, I think so, like, I'd say like shoot for 12, that sounds like, I mean, we can vote on that, but that sounds like a reasonable number. And then, yeah,
Yeah,
if
so
somebody
that's what I
leaves,
think
then we
too.
can review the applications that we have.
That's what I'm thinking too, because you can't really leave people hang out there because they're gonna lose interest and move on and find something different to do. But if they're interested, it just seems to me the more people that we can get interested in this and get the word out to the general public, the better we're gonna be. So then you're back to the whole debacle of, well, at 12 people, we kind of just throw them on the list if they apply. So how do you get past that hurdle?
Well, you could, this is Lisa again, you could also ask them to attend the meetings so that they're, participating as a public person. And they would be, learning about the process, and so they can still participate in the meetings. They're just not an official RAD member. So that.
That seems like a great idea to me, to have them, if they're interested, they're gonna come, whether they're a rap member or not, I would think.
And it would make the ease of transition if a space opens up a lot smoother, because they've already got some background.
And they can see what it's about as well. So to see, am I really committed to this?
And we can add into the application, number of RAB meetings attended so far, so that can add to the, credibility, at least to the applicant. Give them some, I've been attending these RAB meetings for that, so we can change the application a little bit, but keep the application online. So anybody can fill it out at any time. Right. Just decide whether or not you're gonna vote them in or not, or invite them to listen as a public. But it's on the line right now, and we'll stay there and be active.
Would adding that to the application be valuable to the voting members to assess?
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it, and I think it would also kind of send the message that we're encouraging folks who are interested in being a part of the board to attend meetings and kind of know what they're getting into.
Cool.
Yeah, so Valerie here. So I am a board member for the Underwood Conservation District. And I was an associate board member for a year. And so I participated in the meetings, but wasn't able to vote. And that was very helpful because just like with this group, I'm still catching up with the terms. So when you have people that are participating, I think that's really important to put on the application because it's gonna be much quicker to onboard them. So I'm very much in support of that.
Yeah, we can go ahead and add that to the application. No need to vote to request that.
And I'm wondering if we even need to do, have we ever even approached the number 20? Has this group approached the number 20?
We had a dozen at the first meeting, and I don't think we ever got all 12 to actually show up.
So I don't know if we even need to really put a number on. Maybe we just keep it the way it is, shooting for the max of 20. And maybe if it starts to tick up, then we can have another discussion of what to do about that. I mean, if that hasn't really happened, I don't see it as a problem, and I don't want to fix a problem that we don't have.
Well, this is Kate, I wouldn't be opposed to having just some simple language around it so that we're not like in a situation where we receive a bunch of applications and then we have to decide retroactively that we've, kind of overshot, unless we're trying to get 20 people on the board, which I think is a different discussion. I think having an idea of how many people we're shooting for to maintain the number is just helpful for
I guess that's
folks to know.
I guess going back a step, that's the first question, what size do we want this board? Because 20 people is a big board, both person, you added virtual, 90% of the talking's been in this room, not on those things, so it's very hard to manage, especially 20 people.
This is Lisa again. Also, just bear in mind that number 20 is also for high density populations. So that's a guideline for, bigger communities as well. So, and this being a smaller population, I think you have really good representation right now. And it sounds like you'd be welcoming people that were interested. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's helpful. This is Kate, I'm totally comfortable with shooting for around a dozen and then asking folks to join, interested folks to participate in meetings, when there's no open positions to kind of, they might show up to a meeting or two and decide, like, it's not really for me, and it'd be good to find that out ahead of time.
Yeah.
So.
So oh, go ahead.
This is Kelly. What comes up more often in meetings is that RAB members stop attending and then we can't get a quorum. So that's okay as long as you're able to get a quorum. And so we might want to consider shooting for odd numbers if you're going for a maximum. And I have had RABs as small as 2 people. So there's still regulators attending and representatives from the team of the installation. So I wouldn't call that high interest though. That's what happens over time on RABs that I've seen develop a lot of trust, and they're further in the process.
Were the other RABs that you were talking about that had the 20 type people members, was that an NPL as well? Or was that a different type of situation than what we have here?
Good question, Mitch. This is Lisa again. This is EPA guidance. So that number 20 is from EPA, and it's just a general guideline. So I'm not referring to any specific RABs.
Okay, I know that you had said something about in a larger community that they were up to 20. So I was just wondering, that larger community, was it also an NPL site?
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear. I wasn't referring to a specific community. What I was saying is that is an EPA guideline at 20, taking into consideration communities of all sizes, including high diversity. I mean, I'm sorry, high, demographic in terms of population. Yes.
Okay.
So there seems to be a consensus that 12 or maybe 13 going with an odd number seems to be a cap for the size of the board. And then at that point, if we get to there, we do a wait list for applications.
Yes, 11 is also an option for not.
True. I mean, and then we're there.
We're there. Job done.
So,
And you guys
I
could
guess-
always vote to change it later if that doesn't seem to fit the need. So.
Yeah, if the wait list for some reason grows to 5, 6 people, then maybe there's a high enough interest, we can get people more involved. So,
That's what I was gonna suggest, that I see this happen all the time with planning commissions, commissioners and stuff. They'll approve something, but they never set a review date. And so if we do vote to say, yes, it's 11, let's run with it, then we should at the same time also say, hey, unless something comes up immediately where this just is not functioning, but say, let's look at it in 6 months from now. And are we still, everybody okay with the 11 people? Because now we got people or 5 people only showing up, the other people are missing throughout the summer and stuff, so. If we had more people on the board than the 5 people that are missing or whatever, then these other people that are here would actually be involved in the meetings. So I would say a review date would be a great thing to throw into the approval.
Lydia Anderson has her hand up.
Hi, thank you. Thanks. I wanted to just ask about the EPA guidance that was cited. If there's a source for that. I'm on the EPA, I'm on our website now about the RAB, and what I'm seeing is, just based on that, is the RAB should generally be no larger than 20 individuals, but no smaller than is necessary to adequately reflect. So basically, like, no larger than 20 is what it's saying. And then it says if RAB membership significantly exceeds 20, efforts should be made to consolidate and eliminate duplicative representation of similar viewpoints.
That's accurate. And when the guidance was written, the number was, I think, 30 or 32. And that is very large for making sure everybody has qualitative input.
Thank you. It's a little bit echoey for me, but I can mostly hear. So I wanted to just make sure we were all just clear on that. So thank you.
So again, I guess in interest of time, make sure we cover all the topics planned for tonight. I'll entertain a motion to set the maximum number of board members as well as a plan to create a wait list and a review date for membership levels.
I'd make a motion for 13.
You want to set create a wait list system and
Yeah,
maybe
and then also the weight system and then a review date. It's 6 months.
So I guess at this point, every July and January.
Sure.
Okay.
13?
All right, so to restate, the motion was to set the RAB membership at 13, create a wait list system if we reach the 13 members, and do a membership analysis every 6 months in July and January.
We're doing the wait list either way, right?
Yes, either way, yes.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Not hearing any other discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 That sounds like the majority. Motion passes. Okay, thank you, everybody. And I will now hand it over to the
Yeah.
board.
Great. So before we go on to the next slide, the next topic would be an FFA update. I was expecting Rich Francis here, but he is not today. Lydia, do you have any update to share from Rich on FFA, Federal Facility Act?
Thank you, Megan.
Agreement, Federal Facility Agreement.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so on the federal facility agreement, we had a briefing with RA6 Killer scheduled for this week. I actually just saw that it got rescheduled for the 23rd. We are processing the public comments that we received. I can briefly say what the comments are that we received, what that universe is. There were comments from Bonneville Power Authority. There were about 350 comments from the public. Those were basically all the same generic, some version of a generic Sierra Club message. And then from Columbia Riverkeeper, we had between two petitions, about 2,000 signatures. And then let me just check my notes. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Oh, and then of course the Yakima Nation. Yeah, that's a big one that I didn't say. So we had comments from the Yakima Nation as well. And so that's the universe of comments that we received. And we were working on addressing those.
Any questions on Federal Facility Agreement from our board members?
Is there any way to get the public, I know I asked about this last time, I didn't really seem to get a great answer, but on the public comment, how can the RAB board members see that? Or I know we've talked about creating an email address for RAB members. And like planning commission would go to all the RAB members. So the public comments that are coming in, is there an address that could be added that the RAB board can actually review these comments, or something that we have to do a public record request in order to get these things? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I know there's going to be a responsiveness summary that goes out. I cannot remember if a copy of the public comments go out with it. I think so, but Lydia might need to confirm that.
Yeah, that's correct. We will be putting a summary out of the comments that we received. As to whether the RAB would be able to see those, that's not something that I can immediately answer. My initial reaction is, I would have to check with my supervisors and with our community involvement coordinators. I don't know that I know of a procedure immediately for that.
Yeah, and I know with the public comment coming in, that those are required to go to EPA. There would not have been an opportunity for the public to see those at the same time that EPA is getting those with what EPA's role is. So, but we will follow up on exactly that rollout.
This is Kate. At some point, do those comments become part of the administrative record, or? Is that a way we can see them?
I will follow up on that.
Yeah, so that's what we want to follow up on. I was like, I want to say, I thought my understanding was once the responsiveness summary is done, those at a minimum, if not the comments, I think they get, available, but I don't want to say for certain and misspeak.
Mm-hmm. So when you mentioned summarizing the comments, who is it that does those summaries?
Actually, recently it's been in discussion. It's the FFA agreement doesn't specifically say who. EPA is kind of taking the lead on doing that, but that responsiveness summary will have input from the Corps and the states as well.
It seems maybe a little, I think as much transparency as possible around public comments, and not leaving it up to particular entities, including, in this case, the polluter, to make interpretations and summaries of those comments. So I think, I feel like.
Yeah, and I would agree, but yeah, with what we're having right now, the public comment stuff, that was collecting the comments and consolidating, that was EPA's role. And then as all the parties look at the comments and we decide whether any of those changes can be made or not. And then if we can't reach agreement on whether a change should or should not be made, then we would have to go through a formal dispute resolution process. But right now, everybody's kind of just digesting the comments and we haven't met together yet to come to those agreements or not.
Okay, well, I would encourage trying to find a way to make those comments as publicly accessible as possible, because I think they are.
Yeah. And like I said, I want to say that's the case. I don't want to say yes and then that be wrong. But I think that is the case. But like I said, we will follow up immediately and we will send an email to the RAB.
That sounds great. Thank you.
I had this Bauer here, I have a follow-up on that. It sounds like it's almost being distilled to a certain extent. So even if we're able to see the comments eventually, how will they know that they're not put into table and distilled into a different form than what they came in as?
And that's the part with checking that I know the responsiveness summary will do that, but I want to say that the public comments themselves are also with it. But again, I'm not 100% certain, so I don't want to say that with any certainty.
Okay, thank you for checking. I appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions before we move on? Great. So I'm just going to launch us into our project status. Our main topic tonight is to have Oregon Health Authorities, Representative Dana Crosby, go through, just review some of the background of the fish advisory and then talk about their plan for distribution of those materials. So I'll try to leave as much time for that as possible and the conversation around that. So moving right into the upland operable units. The supplemental remedial investigation quality assurance project plan, or as we sometimes just very shorthand say, the QUAC. This has been provided to the regulators and the tribes for their review. That actually went out on June 28th. So they have 60 days for review of that. We're expecting the comments to come back around August 27th. For the non-time critical removal action, we are currently developing that engineering evaluation and cost analysis, and that document is going to be that justification for completing the removal action. That is currently under development. We're expecting to start the Corps' internal review of that draft document next month. Regulator review of that document, we're currently projecting to be in October. Of course, subject to what kind of comments we may have on that and how long it takes to resolve those, but that's our current schedule. I'm gonna go through the next couple of slides and then we'll pause for questions and comments. On the river operable units, supplemental remedial investigation phase 1. Still in the same place as last time. We'll be doing the next mobilization in the fall. We are expecting to get the validated results on that very soon. It'll be about mid-July, we're expecting to get those. And once those validated results come in, we'll be able to continue the development of the technical approach on the second phase of that River OU supplemental remedial investigation. And I believe this is our last project update slide. A quick one on Cascades Island. The preliminary assessment, we have received comments from regulators and tribes, and we're actively working the responses to those comments. Once those are given to regulators and tribes, they'll be able to go back and back check the next revised draft to assess how their comments were incorporated. The revised, back one please. The revised site management plan has been submitted to regulators and tribes. That went out on the 28th of June. That one has a shorter time frame for review, 30 days. There can be an extension requested if those parties deem fit, but that's the initial review period. So we're expecting at this time to have comments back by, I believe it is 30 July. We expect to have those comments. So we beat the date by a couple days, but it was right before a weekend, so we just counted it as the first, basically. And then finally on the community involvement plan, so we had been providing a response to comments on those comments received from Environmental Protection Agency, Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, Oregon Health Authority, and Yakima Nation. And those were, just to clarify, the parties that responded with comments, not the full parties that reviewed. Since providing those responses to comments out to those groups, we got a few extra comments back from Oregon Health Authority and Oregon DEQ. So we're going to be working to assess those and then revise the document again and put it back out for that back check of response to comments. So that's the next step there. I will pause there before we move on. Any questions regarding project updates? Okay. Next slide, please. On Visitor Center, I'm going to touch on a brief status on this one. The revisions that we got for poster 3, those have been incorporated. I went through that actually this morning with Dana Crosby over at Oregon Health Authority. She did have a couple quick tweaks that I'll talk about on the next slide. There's a couple comments that we're still trying to work on how we're going to be incorporating those for the first 2 posters. All right, so my throat's getting a little itchy. So we'll come back and talk about those revisions at another date, since those conversations are still ongoing in the core. But we can go on to the next slide to look at poster 3. So the major changes that have been made to this one, right about in the middle on the left side, there's a bulleted area that talks about the health effects of PCBs, which I'm sure someone very scientific knows the full acronym for that. Polychlorinated biphenyls. Polychlorinated biphenyls. Okay, thank you so much. So that's been added. We also tried to enhance the do not eat message on there. So that really jumped out and tried to grab the most attention for folks. I want to quickly talk about the recommendations that Dana made earlier, just so folks are tracking. So it is actually on, I believe it's within the first sentence. Currently reads between that the fish advisory is between the Bonneville Dam and Ruffle Creek, and in parentheses, it says 1 mile upstream of the dam. Dana's recommended to change that to between Bonneville Dam and 1 mile upriver of the dam, and then in parentheses, say Ruffle Creek. The reasoning for that being Ruffle Creek is on the Oregon side, not the Washington. So it's thought that it would be more clear to say 1 mile in the non-parenthesis area. And then the other recommendation Dana had for us was to try to take the fish advisory graphic that's inside that kind of little cartoon sign and just pull it out to the edges of the sign a bit. So just try to maximize that area. So we got those today, those comments today, and we'll be looking at working those in. Questions about the posters before we talk about fish advisory?
One question I had on poster 3, it shows that highlighted area of contaminated fish being above the dam. Why would the resident fish below the dam not be contaminated as well?
That's probably a good conversation for our next topic. That's actually going to go into that like fish advisory, how it was built, the people that were involved in it, and then, you know, those kind of questions will be a good time.
It just seemed odd to me looking at the poster, kind of what I would, as being public, would think, well, I'm not gonna fish up there, but I surely will right below it.
Yeah. Yeah, that actual graphic there, that's really cut and paste of the Bonneville Resident Fish Advisory. And that's what we're gonna talk about next.
Okay.
Okay. Barring any more questions, I can move on to introducing Dana Crosby. A lot of folks will probably have heard Dana talk here before for the RAB. Dana represents Oregon Health Authority and has been a great advocate of this fish advisory. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana. Making sure we still have Dana.
I'm checking.
No, oh gosh.
Oh, she's here.
Okay.
Maybe we're sounding too funny.
Dana, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Awesome. Hi. Thanks for having me. I hope everyone is staying cool and doing okay in this heat. My name is Dana Crosby, and I coordinate Oregon Health Authority's Environmental Health Assessment Program. You can go to the next slide, please. I'm excited to be here virtually with you all to talk about the Bradford Island Resident Fish Consumption Advisory and some of the outreach work that we've begun to raise awareness of it. This is just a quick overview of what I will go over in the slides to come, about 20 minutes. I see that someone says that they're not seeing the slides if any are being shared. I can see them okay on my end. You all see that in the chat, facilitators?
But the slides are getting seen by.
Yeah, by July.
Is anyone else on the online portion of the meeting not seeing slides?
I can see them.
Yeah.
Thanks. Julie, you might want to get out of the meeting and go back in. Oh, yeah, she's gonna try that.
Great.
Yes, Lydia, that's where
Hey,
we're
this
at.
is Pam. I just want to make sure we're on I can see current. Is it objective and agenda still?
Yes.
Great, thanks.
Okay, Julie's coming back in right now.
All right, Dana, please
Awesome.
continue when you're ready.
Sure. So we'll review the Bradford Island Resident Fish Consumption Advisory recommendations, as well as the Middle Columbia directly adjacent, and then we'll talk a little bit about the education and outreach work the OHA, Washington Department of Health, and other partners have done to date, and then we'll wrap up by talking about next steps and our plan going forward. Next slide, please. So a lot of this advisory specific information will probably be a repeat for you older RAB members, but the Army Corps first provided fish tissue sampling data to OHA in 2012. This map shows the locations of those fish sampling efforts. OHA assessed that data and found that the resident fish in this area have high levels of contamination, high enough to harm people's health. So in order to protect public health, OHA co-issued the resident fish advisory with Washington Department of Health in 2013. This advisory is not a law, but a strong recommendation that no one eat resident fish from the area because of the high levels of PCBs and mercury in the fish. This is probably a good time to note that OHA does not have a fully funded fish advisory program to conduct outreach. So we have staff that can assess fish tissue data when it becomes available, and if needed, to issue consumption advisories. But publicity and outreach typically include issuing a press release and maintaining our webpage. But beyond that, outreach has generally been underfunded. This is important to know in the context of what has and hasn't been done to continuously raise awareness of this advisory. Next slide, please. So this is a screenshot of the new advisory signs, and I'm showing it here because it conveys the most essential information. As with any fish advisory, it's important to know where, what fish, and how many are safe to eat, aka the recommended meal limit. The Bonneville Dam Fish Advisory applies to the area between the dam to 1 mile upstream of the dam. On the Oregon side, that's about where Ruckle Creek joins the Columbia River. This is a do not eat resident fish advisory. In the red are some examples of resident fish, but the advisory applies to any and all resident fish in the area, even those that are not pictured. The do not eat advisory means that the levels of pollution in these fish are so high that there is no safe amount to eat, and that's because these resident fish live their entire lives around the Superfund site, accumulating contamination. Lamprey are more migratory and are less contaminated. So although folks are able to eat them, we recommend limiting consumption to 2 to 4 meals a month. Like it says in the orange box, people who are or may become pregnant, are nursing, and children under 6 should limit their intake to 2 meals a month, while everyone else can safely consume 4 meals per month. In the green box, migratory fish such as salmon, steelhead, and shad only pass through the area on their way to and from the ocean and are the safe, healthy choice from the Columbia River. This fish advisory is an important way for people to prevent exposures to Bradford Island contamination. However, this fish advisory is not intended to be a permanent solution to the contamination, but more of an interim measure to protect human health until the site is cleaned up. And it will be in place until fish are clean and healthy to eat. Next slide, please. So this map shows the area we call the Middle Columbia River. You can see the Bonneville Dam Resident Fish Advisory there towards the left side in red. The yellow region towards the right shows the boundaries of the Middle Columbia River Fish Consumption Advisory, which begins right where the Bonneville Dam Advisory stops and then ends upstream at the McNary Dam. This advisory is based on fish tissue data obtained from fish within the Middle Columbia River. And I want to talk about this advisory as well because it's right next door and it's relevant for communities throughout the region. Next slide, please. So just like at the Bonneville Dam, migratory fish like salmon, steelhead, and shad are again the safe and healthy options. In this advisory, it's recommended that folks limit their intake of resident fish each month to 4 meals per month. For sensitive groups, including people who are or could become pregnant or breastfeeding, as well as children under 6, it's recommended to only eat 2 servings of lamprey a month if caught from the Middle Columbia. For all other groups, men, women who are not of childbearing age, etc., the recommended meal limit is 4. And then northern pike minnow are not safe to eat in any amount. It's worth noting that in both advisories, we're really most focused on the resident fish that spend their whole lives in this relatively small area. Next slide, please. Oh, we can go back one. I was just going to say I'll transition to talking about education and outreach strategy and some of the work that's been done so far. Next slide. So this is a quick overview of some of the work OHA has done since the site was added to the National Priorities List, aka the Superfund program, in 2022. As a result of that listing, our environmental health assessment program became involved. We visited the site in 2022 in the fall, and we began building partnerships with local and tribal governments and organizations. Over the following year, we developed materials and began planning our outreach. I'd like to share more about what we learned from this process, so I'll speak to some of the items on this timeline in more detail on the coming slides. In winter of 2022, we convened a group of interested agencies and organizations for a series of meetings to plan raising awareness of the Bonneville Dam Advisory. The focus of our first meeting was to generate cross-agency, cross-organization ideas on the best ways to raise awareness of the advisory and to hear everyone's outreach priorities. To name just a few quick examples of organizations that were represented at this series of meetings, partners include our sister agency across the river, Washington Department of Health, local health departments like Hood River and Multnomah counties, environmental agencies like Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and Department of Fish and Wildlife, and tribal organizations and governments like Yakima Nation and Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, as well as community-based organizations like Columbia River Keeper. One of the highest priorities for the group was installing eye-catching and informative signage at river access points, in addition to ensuring that materials are available in a variety of languages. We also heard the importance of outreaching to fishing communities directly, including tribal fishers, as Bradford Island is a treaty-protected, usual and accustomed place for tribal fishing, where there are currently dozens of tribal fishing platforms. Tribes have repeatedly experienced detriment to migratory fish sales, and there's concern how general people will react when buying migratory fish. So efforts to raise awareness of the resident fish consumption advisory need to be really strategic to ensure that tribal fishing and sales are not harmed. Next slide, please. Using the feedback from this group, we and Washington Department of Health set out to develop materials. The tagline on these, "Eat salmon, steelhead, and shad, leave the rest," comes from input from this group of partners, and it's intended to emphasize the healthy choice options. We also heard that even when folks are aware of the advisory, they may choose to eat the fish anyway for a variety of reasons. You can see in some of our materials, we include this diagram on the right that shows how to reduce some exposure to PCBs by trimming away the fat and skin. Mercury cannot be removed through cooking or cleaning, but other toxics like PCBs collect in the fat on a fish. You can reduce exposure to PCBs by about 50% by removing fat and organs when you clean and cook the fish. I do want to note that even after cutting the exposure in half, the risk from the Bonneville Dam resident fish is still significant and above safe levels to consume. So these materials went through several rounds of feedback from partners to ensure their usefulness, and we're really grateful to everyone that offered their insight on how to make these materials better. And we're especially grateful to Washington Department of Health for lending their education expertise to ensure these are accessible in plain talk language and putting them through a professional graphic design process. Next slide, please. Last summer, we held the third of 3 meetings to discuss and plan additional outreach ideas and ways to use these materials. The group had a lot of great ideas, including specific distribution points for the materials and additional local partners to engage in this effort, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few slides. Next slide. Over last winter, we worked to finalize the materials and have them translated. We also began working with the Army Corps to plan production of the materials, which included printing the paper resources and producing the sign at various sizes. Next slide. Before we talk about the materials themselves and our next steps, I want to spend some time on the specific audiences that we want to reach and why. This is a snippet from our poster, and I want to draw your attention to the text there in red that says children and people who are pregnant, may become pregnant, or are nursing are at higher risk of adverse health effects from eating the resident fish caught in this area. In relation to fish advisories, this group is often referred to as a sensitive population or a physiologically vulnerable group, and they are one of our priority audiences here. There are also social factors to consider in planning outreach, which I'll talk about in a few slides. Next slide, please. So the chemical nature of PCBs means our bodies can store them in fat tissue over a lifetime, just like the fish themselves. During pregnancy, these same fats are used to grow the fetus, and after the baby is born, they go into breast milk. PCBs in the mother's body can be passed to a child through breast milk, so PCBs can have intergenerational effects. This is why we recommend that people who may become pregnant or are pregnant do not eat these resident fish, because their children can be exposed to PCBs much, much later on. Young children's growing bodies are also negatively affected by PCBs, but PCBs can harm people of all ages. Some of these adverse health effects can include lifelong learning and behavior problems in children, immune system problems, thyroid problems, damage to the reproductive system, and various kinds of cancer. So everyone should follow the resident fish advisory recommendations, but it's especially important that people in this vulnerable group follow them. The levels of PCBs are quite high here, so the health risks are significant for this group. And the only way to mitigate these health risks in the short term is to follow the fish advisory. Next slide, please. One of the challenges in raising awareness of the fish advisory is many people travel from more distant communities to fish at the site. This includes various immigrant and refugee groups residing throughout the Columbia Gorge and in Portland, as well as tribal communities. We especially want to reach fishers who share their catch with sensitive groups. Again, that's people who are or may become pregnant, are nursing, or have small children in their family. People in the same group also may be uniquely positioned to receive new health information, i.e. during pregnancy, and also make the majority of dietary choices for their family. Next slide, please. So to quickly preview the materials that we developed with Washington Department of Health, this is our sign design. You can see it has the tagline translated into 4 languages. Generally, this is a lot of information, and we don't expect anyone to really memorize all of this. Our hope is more so that people check our website, which I'll share at the end, before they go out to fish and know the relevant advisories and species where they plan to go. Next slide, please. We have developed a handful of print resources ranging from a detailed 2-page fact sheet to a 1-page flyer, as well as a 1-sided field poster. Next slide. We developed a resource for these sensitive groups, generally titled For Pregnancy and Young Children, that focuses on healthy fish choices from the lower to middle Columbia, which includes the Bonneville Dam Resident Fish Advisory. And then we also have a variety of template social media posts that are ready to be shared with partners that include captions and images. Next slide. All of our materials are available in 7 languages. That includes Spanish, Russian, Ukrainian, Vietnamese, simplified, and traditional Chinese and Korean. We have looked into translating these materials into tribal languages as well, and arranging translators for all languages that are spoken by all tribes in the area has proved challenging, but it is a suggestion that we're looking into. Next slide. All of our materials are available online, and I'll show this URL at the end too. You can see our website describes the general fish advisory information, as well as the health risks and the fish, the resident fish that are involved, and the adverse health outcomes. And then towards the bottom, you'll see all of these resources and all of the languages for which they are available. And then you can download and share them by clicking on those links from this page. Next slide, please. So once we have the printed materials, we plan to distribute copies to numerous partners throughout the region. This is just a quick list that includes health agencies, tribal health organizations, clinics, recreation sites, community events and spaces, and local programs that relate to nutrition and health, such as the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, aka WIC. We plan to do direct outreach through tabling at events, giving presentations, and using multimedia strategies to reach people in different ways. This photo is just an example of the kind of information kiosk we hope to post our signs or posters at. Next slide. We also plan to support installation of signage along the river. Signage installation depends on property owners' willingness to install the signs, and identifying the property owner can be kind of tricky along the river. These locations here depict suggestions we've received over the last year for potential sign locations throughout the larger region. Next slide. And this is a zoomed in view of the Bonneville resident fish advisory area, again, showing locations that were suggested. And my understanding is that there are additional locations around the dam itself where some existing signage will be replaced. Next slide. So our immediate next steps are to follow through on distributing copies of the print materials to our partners throughout the gorge once they are available. We will work with landowners to support their installation of the advisory signs once the signs are produced. We hope to reconvene the group of partners that informed this work to provide updates and identify additional outreach opportunities and needs. This could include furthering communications to fishers that share their catch with sensitive populations. So our program's main work at the Superfund site is to assess the risk the greater site poses to human health. This kind of assessment usually takes several years and culminates in a report that includes recommendations to agencies and the public on ways to prevent harmful exposures, if any are found. And we do know that the fish consumption will be a big part of that report. And so even though that assessment isn't done yet, we really wanted to dig into raising awareness of the fish advisory ahead of time. Next slide. I want to wrap up with some shared goals going forward. Again, the resident fish advisory here is not a permanent solution to address the contamination, but is a necessary interim measure to protect public health. Our goal here is to raise awareness of the fish advisory without harming tribal fish sales. Generally, fish has a lot of health benefits and is an incredibly nutritious food. So we do want to encourage folks to eat fish. Sorry, I lost my spot. We also recognize, the cultural and psychosocial and economic benefits of catching and eating your own fish, including subsistence and the spiritual connection to tradition that fishing and eating fish include. So in conclusion, we want to make sure we're really balancing the risks and benefits when we recommend that no one eat the resident fish here. Next slide, please. So these are our web pages, including the specific URLs for the Bonneville Dam and the Middle Columbia advisories, as well as OHA's general fish advisory page, where all the advisories in the state can be found. This is, again, it's a lot of information, and so we don't expect anyone to memorize it. Our main hope is that folks get in the habit of checking our website before they go and become familiar with the relevant advisories for the places or species that they fish. That email there is our program inbox and is the best way to reach us. So I want to thank again the partners that have helped OHA through this process, and thanks to the RAB for your interest in having me present. I can try to answer any questions you might have, although our toxicologist was not able to attend tonight. So if it's a technical question, I'll probably have to note it down and work with Megan and Jackie to make sure we can get the answers back here to this group.
This is Kate. Thanks, Dana. This is really informative and helpful for you to share. I just had one question. When you showed the slides about potential spots for posting the signs, are there any plans to post any downstream of the dam, just to give people a heads up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we were talking with the Corps about having potentially signs posted at the recreation site that I think, I'm not remembering, I think it may be on Hamilton or Cascade Island. I think that sticks out downstream. So that would be the first one that comes to mind, because we were just talking about that recently. But as far as other places, we haven't really gotten any suggestions about downstream spots specifically. So if you have other access points that you would suggest that they're posted, yeah, we're open to suggestions. And then if you happen to know who owns that land as well, that would be a critical piece of information to have to make that go forward.
Great, thank you. I have one more question, maybe for you, Megan. I'm not sure. Do we have any updates on the timing for printing of those materials?
Yeah, we're expecting to, so let me back up a sec. We do have test prints that we've gone over. They all looked great, so we proceeded with the placing the order. We're expecting to get those either very late this week or possibly next week.
That's exciting.
So it will be very soon. Though all those prints are gonna go to Jacob's downtown office. And then we'll, from the core, I'll work with Oregon Health Authority, Washington Department of Health, and then also Multnomah County. They all have orders they place with us. We'll work to get them their shipments. And for anyone inside the room, we do have the 4 printed materials. These are test prints, but these are exactly what they're gonna look like. So if you'd like to look at those today, get your hands on them, please do so.
That's great to get that point. It's exciting.
So Dana, Valerie here, I had a question, and thank you for the excellent presentation. Will this advisory be printed in the Washington and Oregon fish regulations? You know, typically when you read the regulations, there's already health advisories in there for shellfish. There are specific advisories for certain types of fish. It could be the type of fish, and it can also be a specific area.
You're asking if they'll be printed in like the ODFW fishing regulations booklet
Yeah,
or
the Oregon
webpage?
and Washington, yeah, the yearly regulations, because there are already quite a few health advisories in those regulations. So I'm wondering if we would be partnering with them as a great way to get that directly into the hands of the anglers, because they pull those regulations every year to go fishing.
Yeah, I believe that they are in there. I could
Okay.
definitely be wrong. And if they're not in there, then I think it's an awesome suggestion.
And I apologize, I didn't look, I was just kind of going back from memory, like I've seen the shellfish. You see advisories for shellfish, certain species in certain areas. I didn't know if we incorporated these areas in those particular, those regulations or those specific documents yet. Which might really helpful.
There's a question from Christy.
Yeah, Christy, go ahead.
Well, she put it in the chat.
Okay, yeah.
Do you want to say it, Christy?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to know if we can get an electronic copy of the posters once they're finalized. We just have
all those posters.
Our tribe just does a electronic version of a paper, so I was just gonna put that within that paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
So
The fish advisory posters or the visitor center posters, or both?
Both.
Okay, I'll talk first to the fish advisory posters. Those are already finalized. Oregon Health Authority has them digitally on their website, and we'll include that in the minutes. And we can also look to pop that in the chat if we have resources available to do that on our computers.
Yeah, Dana might be doing that now. I see her typing.
Great. And then for the visitor center displays, certainly when we finalize those, we can make them available digital.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions on the, what I call the upper Bonneville Dam pool, which is from Bonneville Dam to the Dalles Dam. That makes sense to everybody. But has anybody done any studies on the sturgeon that are in that dam pool? Because generally they haven't been seen going through the fish ladders very seldom, but they do live in that dam pool. I wonder if the sturgeon actually migrate up and down the river, if anybody knows that. And the other question I had was, let's say these migratory or salmon and steelhead are coming up from the dam. They've been feeding in the dam pool below Bonneville. They go through the fish ladders, and let's say some of these fish are upriver brights or whatever, the fish that go clear the Snake River. And if those fish happen to be down in that dam pool and they eat some of the crayfish or crawdads, and these crawdads in that dam pool are as contaminated as what the numbers are saying, would that fish then become contaminated? Or when would it, to digest that and to get the PCBs? Or the first I heard of mercuries was today in this water. I didn't know there was mercury was part of this issue. I've just heard PCBs, and mercury, I think, transfers pretty quickly. So I'm just wondering, would that fish now, because it's on this boat poster saying it's good to eat, But if you're above Bonneville Dam, it happens to have eating stuff in that area, which salmon and steelhead especially are really aggressive on crawdads. If they see them, they're gonna eat them. So I'm going like, what are the odds of it happening? And does anybody know, once this fish eats something from that area, how long it takes to get inside of that fish at that point? If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think I have to hand
Yeah.
this question on to Dana, but I think I hear two questions, kind of one related to possibly the Middle Columbia advisory. And then the secondary talking about migratory fish within the Bonneville Dam Fish Advisory. So I hand it over to Dana now.
Yeah, these are really great questions. And I, to be honest, I don't think I have the answers for them, but I have kind of noted them down here. I actually heard 3 questions. So you're asking about the sturgeon that we're recommending to not eat in the 1 mile zone upstream of the dam, but you're saying that they, traverse the entire Bonneville pool. And so has anyone studied how far they're traveling, or, if these contaminated sturgeon are going outside of that zone? That's what I heard as the first question. The second question, asking about the migratory fish that pass through and eat the resident fish, like the crayfish, kind of wondering, how much crayfish does it take to contaminate a migratory fish? Something along those lines. And then I also heard kind of a question about mercury, and that was a new detail about the fish advisory that you didn't hear before. So I was going to try to get some more information on that. Does that kind of summarize your questions?
Yeah, pretty much hit it right on the head.
Okay, great. Well, I think it would probably be best if I asked my team about these. I could probably go off the top of my head, but I don't think it would be as accurate as getting the right answer from one of our toxicologists. So if you don't mind, is it okay if I get back to you on those questions? I do think they're really great questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Julie has her hand. Julie, do you want to unmute?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I used to be a toxicologist before I moved into my management role, and I do agree that it's good for Dana to take those specific questions back and have them answered by OHA. But I will say that one of the main things we want to get across with the fish is that resident fish spend their lives in a much smaller area than fish like salmon and sturgeon that migrate through only a small part of the time. So that is why we do see much higher concentrations typically in resident fish at contaminated sites, because they're spending like their whole lives eating, those other organisms that are contaminated in that small area. So while there is some amount of contamination that can be picked up by migratory fish or fish with much bigger home ranges, another analogy I've seen is like at a site that's on land, like a bear has a giant home range compared to a much smaller mammal, right? Like a vole or a mouse that lives in a small area, they're going to get all their food from a small area. So that's typically how we think about these things. But I totally defer to Dana in terms of getting the specific questions answered with respect to the site. And I'm with EPA, by the way, for the folks who don't know me. I work with Lydia and Rich Francis.
I'm not quite sure who this question is for, but a question about signage, that giant rock outcrop that's just west of Bradford Island. It's got the big old no boat sign. Can we put one of those there? I mean, it's right in the middle of the area. I don't know who owns that or if it's even physically or logistically possible, but just a thought.
Yeah, I believe that's the core sign. I can take that away and talk to our folks on site. The one possible issue could be if it takes away from that no boat sign. That is very important to make sure that that's visible. But I'll ask them what the feasibility of adding an additional sign there, and if they have any concerns with
It seems like a very logical spot to put it right in the middle of it.
I can briefly talk to where some existing signs are. If we could roll our slides back to slide 31 in our package. Unfortunately did not have these available for when Dana was creating her slides, but I was able to get them available to talk to them. Let's see what that is. Oh, this is the one. Okay. Yeah. So currently there's 4 signs out that the Corps has that will be replaced. One is on the south shore of Bradford Island. So there's a pink dot on the south side right now. The one that's existing is actually a bit to the west of that. There are 2 on the Washington shore. These are both at a treaty, tribal treaty fishing access areas. They're on the gates to enter those areas. There is one just about where the question mark is on the Washington shore on this graphic. And then there's another one that's a bit further east, but before that Fort Rains pink dot that's up there. And there is one more on Goose Island currently. It's on the northwest tip of Goose Island. And there are a couple platforms, fishing platforms that we know are existing right in that area as well.
Are there any, there's all those fishing platforms on the Washington side that are, there's just east of the, visitor center?
Mhm.
Are there any plans to put, I don't know if that's Army Corps property there?
Yeah, I believe that's all the treaty access area, and we have 2 existing areas that we have signage that will be replaced.
Okay, cool.
It'll be refreshed.
It'll be like right on either access and.
With this kind of top right.
Okay, great. And are those gonna be like metal signs?
Let's see, we have like aluminum. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they're gonna be pretty hardy. They'll have UV print, ink print.
Cool.
Out with the, just long term.
Great.
Any other questions regarding the fish advisory? Do we have any questions from the public about the fish advisory or the distribution that Dana shared today? Okay, great. All right, let's move on to the next slide then. And I believe it's back over to you.
Yes, so at I believe the May meeting, we scheduled, monthly meetings out in August. I believe that was confirmed at the meeting in June, if I read the minutes correctly. And then discussion about maybe a refresher training meetings or possibly scaling back the frequency of the meetings. And I'm not quite sure where that conversation left off.
Sure, so I'll take it from there. There are a couple pending topics. So I'll first talk about just the general meeting topics that we've discussed having in the future. One is to talk about project next steps. In other words, like, here we are and where are we going from here? That was requested to be after the federal facility agreement was in effect. That may not be in effect in our August meeting. We could schedule that out for the subsequent meeting. If it's still in effect, we could move it from there, but just as a placeholder, we could put it whenever meeting is voted to be subsequent to August. I did want to offer a quick update too on Cascades transmission. We had some conflicts unfortunately come up for the meeting we were planning to have late June with the folks over there. We're gonna have to reschedule it. But we'll still be having that meeting with them. We'll come back with some more information and we can kind of go from there to discuss if there's more desired from this board or what other questions there might be. So those are the 2 outstanding topics that we've had. We also want to talk about RAB training. We have a lot of new members. We haven't gone through an official training. Everybody's been provided a electronic video of a previous training, but we'd still like to take everyone through the training themselves. And I'm wondering if there's interest in doing that in lieu of a future meeting. This time is generally one that RAB members are making open in their schedules. So it'd be a really easy way to get that kind of fit into everybody's schedules. And of course, it would be open to all members if anyone wants a refresher.
I would say it's a good idea to have it, and if there was something, another topic that maybe needed to be discussed at that time, it would be appropriate to talk about it at that point, or can we not? Because the meeting was for the training only.
One thing we could do is plan to have an abbreviated public meeting, and then go into a RAB member training. And then it would just be offline.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was just, if something come up, let's say we dedicated September to have that training meeting, we got something come up that kind of needed to be discussed, but then that would get kicked clear out till October because we had the training instead of the regular meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good to me to do something like that if something come up.
Yeah.
To be,
Yeah, we could plan for, if it was September, October, whatever you want the next meeting to be. After August, we could plan 30 minutes, maybe 30 to 45 minutes, I think would be ideal for a brief meeting. And then that would still give an hour and a half or at least an hour and 15 minutes for training.
but if there was nothing really concerning, we could kind of blow past the meeting and.
Yeah, it could end up being just a brief status.
Yeah.
Would you like to make a motion on it?
Sure, I would motion to do that and have a brief meeting in the beginning. And then as far as the date, I'm not real sure. I mean, it seems like we don't have anything in September. So probably September would be a good time to do that training session as well.
Okay, so let me know if this restates your motion correctly. It sounds like the motion is to have the following meeting after August be in September, the second Tuesday in September. To first start with a brief public meeting, no longer than 45 minutes. And then to continue into a RAB members only training session. Is that correct?
That sounds good to me.
Okay, great. Is there a second?
A second for September 10th.
Thank you so much. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Let all the ayes come out. I thought that was in. Sounds like we have the vast majority. All right, thanks all. So our next meeting after August will be the second Tuesday in September, September 10th. We'll plan to do hybrid for a brief public meeting. We'll follow up with a private meeting for RAB members to do training. We can host that hybrid as well.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a comment in the chat from Lydia.
Yeah.
And she wanted to provide an update from the EPA, the involvement coordinators. Lydia, do you want to chime in or do you want me to read it?
I'm happy to let you read it. I don't, yeah, or I'll just go ahead and read it. So what they wanted to make sure that I shared was that they're looking forward to reviewing a final draft Bradford Island CIP once USACE has incorporated all of the additional comments and feedback.
That's the community involvement plan for anyone not familiar with the acronym.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one we received a few extra comments from Oregon Department of, excuse me, I just got to mix all the organizations. Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and Oregon Health Authority provided us some additional comments. And EPA is looking forward to reviewing that after we incorporate them.
Okay, thank you. And then Jennifer Riddle is saying she wanted to let the board know that she cannot attend the September 10th meeting.
Oh, okay.
And I think she's new, so she would want to be part of the training. Is that right, Jennifer?
Right.
That is correct. I apologize. I will be out of the country, so. But I don't know what to say. Sorry.
Well, it'll be recorded, right?
Yeah, it will be recorded.
okay.
So we could
Perfect.
provide a recording to you.
Okay.
It is, I will say it is most valuable when we can provide it as a group.
Yeah.
So if folks are open to it, it may be worth moving that particular instance to October when all the new members can attend.
And I'll be out of the country in October.
Oh, heck.
For a few weeks.
What
Hey, this
about
is Pam.
sooner?
I have a question. Is there going to be is it going to be in person or sorry, I've got it back. I can hear myself. Is it going to be in person or both virtual and in person?
Yeah, it'd be hybrid, virtual and in person.
Yeah, we could do hybrid for the training.
Great.
Mitch, you mentioned the possibility of earlier. Would anyone want to entertain doing this for our next meeting on August 13th?
Did everyone attend on August 13th?
I see nods in the room. Anyone online that cannot attend August 13th as a new RAD member?
I can make it.
I would like to attend. I'll be there. This is Pam.
Would folks like to change that to August?
I would motion, to change it to that, the 13th of
Okay.
August.
Great. We have a motion to change that abbreviated public meeting combined with a RAB member training to August 13th. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I second.
All in favor? Okay.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Just for tracking. Okay, the ayes have it. We will have that meeting on the 13th. All right, great.
Do we want to continue the monthly meetings, or is the board at a spot where it feels like we could go to every other month?
I would like to stay monthly until, I don't even know what date, just leave it monthly.
Is there any particular maybe event or sort of status that folks would be thinking would be a good time to reassess that? Previously, we discussed possibly reassessing when the federal facility agreement was signed. It is signed now. I guess it's technically in effect now. It's not out to the comments are not like released out at this point. The public comments and the responsiveness summary are not released yet.
I guess the only concern,
I have a suggestion. My suggestion would be when the posters are out, maybe that could be a celebration of, an endpoint.
I didn't catch that, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Once the visitor center signs are completed and we've accomplished our mission,
Oh,
get those out to the public. We celebrate by not having any.
I mean, we can, in seriousness, we can absolutely reassess that.
Yeah, but there seems to be general consensus that until further notice, monthly meetings is gonna be the plan.
Oh,
I would also be maybe suggest that we consider doing alternative months virtual only, if that would remove some of the burden for folks who have to travel a longer distance to be here. I don't know if that's.
It does certainly reduce the resources that are used on this meeting.
So, I mean, maybe that's if I hear, if new members are wanting to meet monthly, I think we should certainly provide that. Some space for new members to have some more regular meetings before we reduce the frequency, but maybe we can come up with something like shorter meetings every other month or all virtual or something that feels like a compromise. I don't know what other folks think.
My thought was that as long as we have stuff going on, studies and such going on, we truly need to stay on top of that. And until we actually get boots on the ground, something going on that we're actually seeing numbers come back, that there's progress, I would suggest to stay with monthly meetings so that we're aware of what's going on or what isn't going on. And if something's taking longer than it should, if we go out to every other month or whatever, then we're gonna have no idea that 60 days has went by and there's absolutely been nothing done. So
Understood.
that's one of the reasons why
Another,
I'm saying,
yeah, another thing we'd offered in the past, if it was, again, to kind of help reduce the burden of kind of, having the meetings every month, even if meetings went to every other month or every 3 months, we could still agree to send out some sort of status, via email and then, update on our website every month. So there would still be some kind of touch point, even if we weren't meeting. So that had been thrown out in the past as well as an alternative.
that kind of brings me back to the other question I was gonna try to bring up here at the end. And that's having that email that the RAD members can communicate together with a one email address instead of finding each individual person's. That way it goes out to the group if you have questions. It seems like,
Like a listserv.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like our planning department, it's planning
Yeah,
department and it goes to all the members in the planning department. City council, same thing, you write it to the city council, it goes to all of them. So is there a possibility that we can start a RAD member email?
So I can tell you what the core can provide, and that's not to say that it limits everyone from making their own decisions.
Right.
Or their own group email. What the core can provide is we call it like a DLL. So basically you would email a single, kind of group and it would forward out to everybody's emails. What you don't see in that case is you don't necessarily see everybody's replies unless they hit reply all.
Right.
So it wouldn't be kind of like sharing a group inbox where you can see all the different bits of traffic. Unfortunately, we cannot provide a singular email address that all the RAD members would have access. We unfortunately just can't do that for non-core employees.
I think that first option sounds pretty good.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can put that together.
Yeah.
Copy paste.
And I think just, like, knowing who's on that list initially and then like letting folks know if anyone's added is helpful, because I know once you create it, then you can't see necessarily who's in it. It just shows up as the list.
Right.
And so, because I know sometimes if they exist for a long time, you kind of like, who's on here again, who am I sending this to? So that would help.
Okay, so Pam has a suggestion. We could create a Google working folder. It wouldn't be secure, but a way to share public information.
I'm not opposed to having a shared
And it's
folder
free.
for that.
I'll speak up. It's free. It's just a matter of creating a folder. If you have a Gmail address, you have workspace already. Well, not workspace, but the ability to create a working folder to share externally. So it could be emails, it could be documents or links. Open to suggestions though.
Now, for any of these options, the one thing that we do want to make very clear to members of the public is that they're reaching out to the community voting members on the RAB. We don't want them to think that they're emailing the EPA, for example. We don't want them to think they're reaching out to their state regulators or even to the core.
Right.
So whatever we put out there, our wording around it, and also probably the actual name of anything, we should try to focus on making that very clear.
Yeah, if we do share documents, we should have some standards for labeling files and organizing, things like that. It could get hectic.
Sounds like we may just leave it like it is and copy and paste.
Well, I like the idea of like, it's what sounds essentially like a listserv, so you can just email one group and you know it's going to all the RAP members.
Yeah, so you just copy and paste on the list and then send it that way.
Yeah, you should just be able to hit everybody at one time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then reply all. And then it goes back to everybody. It's on.
We have one of those for city managers in Oregon, and the email is the listserv, and you don't have to hit reply, just hit reply, and it automatically just
Goes
goes
to
to
that whole list,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
I don't know how you make it, but
I'll have to double
Yeah.
check that that's also true for the core. My understanding from talking with our IT was that it would not have that function.
Okay.
It would have to hit reply. But I can double check that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a way for us to figure out how to just do it, because most listservs are that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, it just seems like to me that the RAD members should be able to communicate.
Yeah.
And then especially if we get further into it and we start receiving some of the public records and the comments, which should be public record, we shouldn't have to make public record requests to see the information as RAD members. It should be something freely given to us, and that way it could just be one click for who's ever sending those public comments out. Click and boom, then we've all got it for review.
We have a couple comments and also there's 5 minutes left in the meeting. This is Lisa. Okay, so about this topic, Pam was thinking for RAB members, listserv was great. That's her comment. And then there's a couple off topic that are in the chat.
We do just have I have 4 minutes left. We can continue discussion on this, but I would like to provide with folks, some open time as well.
yeah,
Okay, sorry.
yeah, we'll move on to general discussion now.
Okay, there's 2 comments in the chat. One comes from Dana. The question of the fish consumption advisory information is ODFW's guidance, and she found it here and she posted the link.
Oh, right.
Okay. And then the other one is from Lydia. I wanted to clarify whether the training is required of and open to folks not on the RAB. Valerie commented about August 13th, and I want to clarify with Megan and Jackie on this point.
Yeah, for the RAB member training, it is open to non-voting members. We definitely would love to have our regulators in the room to talk about their perspective on what the RAB is and what their role is.
Can you clarify for the public non-voting members, does that include the general public versus, I mean, I know the answer, I'm just saying that.
Yeah,
It's
it doesn't include the general public. Non-voting members includes, so I mean, really the core is a non-voting member is myself, but it also includes the Environmental Protection Agency, folks from Washington Department of Health and Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. Any other business from our members, from our voting members?
Just an announcement that the poll went out that was discussed last month. So it's just 5 questions. It asks about your preferences for meeting frequency and platform and a few other things. So the more people who participate, it would be helpful information for us to gather.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Kelly. It's open to all members of the public. You don't have to be a member of the RAP to participate. RAP members are, of course, welcome to participate. We'd love to facilitate. We'd love to request public feedback on the meetings and how you feel about them. So please share your thoughts with us. Thank you.
The chat has a lot of great information. So,
Will that be captured for the minutes?
yes,
Oh, wonderful, thank you.
but you also have an email, so.
Yeah.
Any other business from our members here? Anything from our RAB members online? And finally, questions from the public or any other comments from our public? right, great. That includes our agenda today.
Okay, do we vote to adjourn or we just adjourn?
We take a motion and a second.
Okay, I will invite motions to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Right at 7:00.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Just in time before the.
I know.
Thank goodness for this. I feel bad every time I say the polluter. I hope you know I'm not referring to you.